What are some awful things from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s everyone seems to not talk about? 25-cent/minute long-distance phone calls. And since we are including the 2000s, remember when it was common to paper text message? My parents lost their minds when my sister sent 1,000 texts in a month. God, this gets me. My sister sent a ton of texts and racked the bill way the f*** up. To pay for this, my parents held a yard sale and in the process, sold my collection of video games and consoles, including a GameCube, 2 pristine NESs with a ton of special controllers, running pad, zapper, etc., a brand new Sega Saturn with a few games, my SNES and all of its peripherals, my collection of Pokémon cards including movie exclusives and my N64 collection while I was out. Pretty sure they sold my gold-plated Pokémon cards from Burger King as well. I never saw a dime. I was fucking furious. I am still fucking furious. If you lost someone's phone number as a kid, good luck reconnecting with them. So many classmates moved and I never heard from them again. Until Facebook came along. That awkward 60 seconds when you're waiting for your friend to come to the phone and you have to make polite conversation with their parent who answered the phone. And nowadays you can know people for years without knowing their family. Or their phone number. I don't even know my mom's phone number. 867-5309, you're welcome. Ballpoint line thin eyebrows, boy bands, having to plan to watch TV shows you'll like, smoking was everywhere, cars without AC, having to listen to the radio in the car, school research before the internet. How terrible it was to go somewhere new for the first time without GPS. Having to print out MapQuest directions. Writing them out by hand if the printer was out of ink. If a road was closed, you had to hope you could figure it out. Traffic's bad? Oh well, your handwritten MapQuest directions didn't conveniently reroute you to a quicker path. Getting bullied and even physically attacked at school for being nerdy or into nerdy things. It's still amazing to me that being nerdy is now cool. Blows my fucking mind too. I used to hang out with this guy in high school named Tommy. He was a pretty hard guy in all honesty. Took no shit from anyone, regularly getting into fist fights, etc. Even got suspended for a month for getting caught with a switchblade at school. Imagine that, only a month for a switchblade, lol. As it turned out, he was a closet nerd. I met him in detention one day and he saw I had a PS1 gaming magazine and asked if he could look through it when I was done. I obliged and we surprisingly hit it off after that. He'd play Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons with my friends and we actually became really close friends. But he always insisted that we never let talk of him playing those games with us out of my circle. He had a reputation to uphold, and that talk would have blown it. He turned out to be a legitimately good dude whom I still talk to this day about nerd shit. But that's just an example of how it was back then. This may get buried, but back in the 80s to 2000s, if there was a popular song, you would hear it everywhere all of the time. There was no Spotify or iPods quite yet, so stores would play the radio and bars had jukeboxes. A hit song was played ad nauseum. I know some young people will say, that's the way it is now, but actually back then it was much worse. There were only so many TV channels at home and radio stations in the car. It was inescapable. 80s hair. Greasy hair gel on men. I'll have you know my hair gel was crunchy. About how us Gen X kids were left alone a lot and we made ourselves sandwiches and cereal. We hung out with our friends all day during the summer while our parents worked and had no supervision. We just kind of ran wild and did whatever and survived just fine. Yes, this is all true. And built tons of character in us. For some of us though it was plain neglect. My dad did it while he had to work but also when he hung out with his girlfriend on the weekends. And he always went to her house. She never came over to ours because she felt my mother's presence at our home and it made her uncomfortable. Even though my dad stripped our home of every single thing that had anything to do with her after she died. Pictures and all. So some of us were just plain neglected. No one really talks about that. Edit, sentence/grammar. Smoking in bars/clubs/restaurants. It was really not cool, even if you did enjoy smoking now and then. You'd go out for a night and smell like an ashtray. Bars and clubs were just generally a lot dirtier back then. Things really cleaned up in the mid-2000s. I worked in rock and roll, so disco. If you forgot the name of a sandwich shop in a town you used to live in, you just forgot it forever. No good or quick way to look it up, you'd have to be really invested in solving the mundane mystery. Now you can just Google map the area and be like, yes. That's it. Yikes. Anyway, Moving on. 3 channels on the TV, and the 3 colored AV plugs for the back of the TV rather than an HDMI. Those things sucked lol. Going on vacation and taking multiple disposable cameras with you. There's one thing all the nostalgia-driven media doesn't tell you about the 80s and 90s was how boring it was. All the things you see about riding bikes with your friends and going to the arcade or comic book store, going swimming or skating rink or bowling. That was only available if you, 1. lived in the suburbs within a 10 to 15 bike ride from an urban area, 2. had friends within said suburbs not far away, 3. had parents well off enough to afford to give you an weekly allowance so you can do these things. If you were like me and millions of others during the time who had working poor parents and lived a 15-minute car ride from your closest friend's house, which means you had to get either yours or their parents to take you anywhere, it was devastating boredom all the time. I'll second this one. And if you had parents that had we bought this TV, we get to choose what we watch mentality, God help you. I'm genuinely struggling right now to remember what sorts of things I used to do to fill my time. Getting viruses on your computer for trying to download free music. Kazaa, Napster, LimeWire, the good old days. And the safest way to do that was to burn a CD from your friend's music collection to get it for free. Those ugly ass sweatpants from the 80s. That's right, with the horrible obtrusive bright colors and out of place patterns like triangles or zigzags. Zigzags, what the hell is up with that? If you didn't know something, you had to walk a couple miles to the library, use the Dewey Decimal System, get a big book and look it up, or just ask someone and believe whatever nonsense they tell you. Going to buy beer/cigarettes with a note from your parents saying that it's for them. As an adult realizing some kids saved those notes and got their own beer and cigarettes. Also just buying lottery tickets with my pocket money as a kid. Thinking about it now, it's like, who the hell would sell kids lottery tickets? Trying to find someone's house the first time with just instructions they gave you, especially when those instructions are wrong. But all the houses look the same, you don't have a mobile phone so you can't just call them, and you wander around the neighborhood for 30 minutes before you have to turn around and drive all the way home to call for clarification. Mall hair. Google it. It was a thing. You either watched till the end, or skipped here. Whatever it is, thank you. Go check out our TikTok for more content like this, and feel free to subscribe. Or don't.